Chapter 2 Bob Read by Carl Casebeer.
Sure, I don't mind telling you my story as long as you don't mind listening and have some tissues handy. I usually tear up when I look back at the journey that brought me here, where I am today. You see, for as long as could remember, my life really sucked. I mean, really, really sucked. Some of it I blame on my mom, but most of it I can blame on anyone else but myself. Let me try to start from the very beginning, if I can remember back that far. My memory is pretty much fried these days, but I can still recall some of the basics. My name is Robert P., but everyone around here just calls me Bob. I was born in Rochester, New York on December 1st, 1969, right in the middle of the hippie movement. Maybe that's my mom's problem. Her only concern was free dope, free room and board, and most of all, free love. The free love part was where I came into the picture. I also had a brother who died of coronary artery disease when I was 26. He was a couple of years older than me, so when he passed, I took it really hard. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get back to my mom. Oh yes, wonderful mom. She didn't win any Mother of the Year awards. When I look back to those years, as far back as I can remember, all I see is totally dysfunctional family. My brother was always sick and needed constant attention. Mom kicked Dad's butt to the curb when I was only 3 or 4 years old, and I never knew why. I resented her for that. I guess that she learned to hate Dad because he got her pregnant twice, which must have cramped her style in a big way. Mom got over Dad the minute the door slammed shut behind him. She immediately started dating and liked to party all night long. A lot of Mom's boyfriends were just like her, abusive monsters. When she barked at them to lock us up in the closet, they obeyed, like Satan's little minions. Mom didn't want us to see her sexual side, so out of sight, out of mind. They would scream at us, threatening to kill us if we dared come out. We never did. They always seemed to enjoy yelling at us or taunting us with threats. It would start with Mom calling us into the living room. Then she would give my brother a backhand because he was the oldest. At that point I would be frightened out of my wits. We were told not to speak or the belt would come off. We never spoke. Both my brother and I were thrown into the cupboard and one last kick or slap could measure. We sat there in the dark, contemplating our own monsters for hours. We both grew up withdrawn and reclusive. I remember going into the family camping trip. I thought we were going to have a lot of fun for a change and was excited beyond belief. I was like a little puppy looking out in every direction from the back seat. My brother sat there with his head hung low. I couldn't understand why he didn't share my enthusiasm. He knew something I didn't. Then Mother slowed down and pulled over to the curb. At that moment I realized that this wasn't going to be much fun after all. I saw one of Mom's abusive boyfriends jump into the car. My brother and I just sat quietly in the back and the entire time. Once at the campsite, which was on an empty field in the middle of nowhere, I was nervous and not seeing anyone else around. There were no kids for me to play with and no witness for the abuse we were about to endure. The same ritual happened each time my mom felt like fooling around with her boyfriend, because there was no dark cupboards to lock us in. Mom's boyfriend came up with the ingenious idea of tying us to a tree. Mom laughed as she put a rope from the trunk of the car. We were marched to the edge of the field where the forest began. A huge oak was standing there waiting for us. We were told to hug the tree tightly as we could, my brother on one side and me on the other side. The rope was secretly wrapped around us to the point where neither of us could move. We weren't going anywhere. It was 5 hours before we were set free. Both my brother and I ended up pissing our pants that day while hugging that oak tree. It was embarrassing, and I was totally devastated. You can probably understand why it had such a negative effect on my mental stability. We were constantly abused by Mom and her friends, not only physically but mentally for years. Mom had a way of attracting weirdos into her life and putting them before us, her kids. I think the smartest thing my mom ever did was drop us kids off at her ex-husband's place. We were just too much for her to handle. Dealing with us became a chore to her. My brother and I were now living with our dad, and that was fine with us. I was now 13 years old and pleased to have finally found my biological father. No more will I have to put up with the abusive behavior of Mom and any of her various boyfriends. I can now look up to my dad for guidance, security, and the one thing I never really knew, love. As it turned out, Dad never gave me the guidance or the security. He did love us, though, bless his heart. You see, Dad was on heroin and would wake up each morning curled up like a baby in the corner of his room crying. He was devastated, his situation being an addict in front of his boys. Dad didn't much last much longer after those days with us living there. He turned us over to the Child Protective Services for our own good, and looking back, I guess he did the right thing. He just couldn't handle managing his addiction and being a responsible parent at the same time. My brother and I became wards of the state. As the social workers came to take us away, my dad came up to me and gave me the one gift that truly stuck with me through all these years. He sat me down, leaned me over, took my hand, and gazed deeply into my eyes. I remember his eyes being aged, bloodshot, and teary, as he said, "Son, I don't have much that I can give you, but there is one thing I want you to have." Then he put an old beat up Bible into my hand. He continued telling me all about Jesus, how no matter what I go through in life, as long as I believe that Jesus died on the cross for my sins, I had a place in heaven. The social worker patiently waited for Dad to finish his sermon. Dad told me to read the good book and to pray each and every day. As the social worker finally took my hand and led me out of the apartment, I looked back to try and get one last glimpse of the man that brought me into this world, my dad. Although I couldn't see him, to this day I can still hear him yelling, "Son, Jesus loves you. Don't you forget that. I'll see you in heaven, son. See you in heaven." He continued to scream at the top of his lungs until we were finally out of hearing range. I think I cried for a week. I wanted to die right then and there, so I could be with my dad. He died within weeks. He was at peace. Of course, over the next few years, I was moved from foster home to foster home. It was horrible. Not the foster parents were mean or anything. They never hit me or abused me. I tried to beg them to let me stay with my brother, who was now 18 years old and living on his own. That would not be in my best interest, I was told over and over and over again. Living in some stranger's home was not comfortable for me. I didn't feel welcome or loved. I didn't feel complete as a person. I had no identity. As far as school went, I was a pretty good student. I breezed through elementary school. Learning was an escape for me from my torturous home life. High school was eventually my downfall. A completely different world was about to be introduced to me by my high school friends. I started out doing well, not being a straight A student, but I constantly getting B's and C's, and for someone like me who basically raised myself since I was 13, those were more than acceptable grades. Grade 10 was when I started slipping, and I know why. Pot. I was out with some friends hanging out in the park when one of them pulled out a joint. The buzz was so amazing. We laughed and laughed until our sides hurt. I couldn't wait until the next weekend when we could get together and do it again. Smoking weed became our weekend routine without fail. Then it slowly graduated from only on Fridays and Saturdays to every day. I found myself staying out with friends on school nights, smoking pot until it almost time for school. Of course, I was in no shape to learn anything. I started falling asleep during class. I actually slept through most of the 11th grade. Luckily, I was in a foster home where I could easily sneak out every night and be back before everyone woke up. It seemed like the perfect arrangement. One day in the middle of math class, I was in the back of the classroom at my desk sleeping off a last night's high. Then I was suddenly startled by the teacher slamming a book down on my desk, sending panic through every fiber of my body and laughter through the entire class. The fear brought on a sudden flashback to the darkness of my childhood closet. While the teacher was yelling at me, my whole world went silent. All I could see was the teacher's mouth moving and all the kids pointing fingers making fun of me. That was it for me. I flipped her the bird, knocked over the desk, and stormed out of there as quickly as I could. I never returned. I dropped out of school entirely and packed up my few possessions and hit the streets. I've been on my own ever since. I was sure I could be all right. I found a job at the local bar as a barback. My job was to keep the coolers fully stocked and to stay out of sight. I did my job well. I made great money, which was helpful in paying for those pot I smoked daily. I also saved enough money to buy a Greyhound ticket to Boston. I heard stories about how much work there was out there, and I imagined myself working on a fishing boat or maybe even in a nightclub. I ended up working at a restaurant, waiting tables. Oh well, it paid the bills. The jobs I found usually lasted for 6 months before I moved on to another opportunity. I guess I thought the grass was always greener on the other side, no pun intended. I found myself working my way south in search of a warmer weather. I ended up in Florida, doing the same thing, waiting tables and smoking pot. You could say that I spent a third of my life in Boston, a third in Florida, and a third just floating around from state to state. My real problem started in Florida when I was 33 years old. Someone saw me smoking a joint and said that getting high on weed was a waste of time. He suggested that I try some of his heroin. I thought back to the short time I spent with my dad, and for some reason I was only able to remember the good, not the bad of the ugly. I readily accepted his offer, and within a few moments I was kneeling over the curb, puking my guts out. After the purging passed, I found myself floating in a world I had never known existed. Things were all wavy and beautiful. The colors were brilliant and the sounds intense. I even tried to look through the psychedelic displays that were assaulting my eyes to see if I could find my dad. He wasn't there. From that day on, I no longer worked to buy pot. Instead, I moved on to more serious drug, heroin. My free fall began. Of course, my addiction caused every job I had to vanish. Nobody trusted me, and for good reason. My last good job was working for Denny's maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I stole $500 from the office and took off to Las Vegas, gambled most of it away. I never got caught for stealing, but the guilt really bothered me. I never went back. I just walked away from a good, steady income. That is what drugs will do to your mind. It wipes out all the reason and sanity and replaces it with fantasy and insanity. I did save enough money for a one-way Greyhound ticket to Tucson. So here I was in Tucson without work. I was totally out of money and homeless. That was when I decided to do something about my addiction. It was now do or die. I went to the local clinic and signed up for a methadone program. It was a difficult time, but I persevered. I am proud to say that I never did heroin again. After the initial withdrawals, I quickly settled into my new consciousness. The wavy, colorful world heroin gave me was gone. I traded it for a black and white reality that was my existence. The clinic gave me a free apartment with a meal once a day, and all I had to do was stay clean. I even tried to stop taking methadone, but without it I couldn't relax and couldn't sleep. I need a little more time with my methadone crutch. Then I messed up again by asking someone in the yard at the apartment complex if they had a Sudafed. My allergies were killing me. I was busted out of the apartment immediately for asking for pills. Their policy is first strike and you're out. No second chance. It was over. I was now officially living on the streets again. I'm sick on the methadone ever since. That is until last month. The clinic I go to finally decided to shut off my supply cold turkey. They told me that it was for my own good, and I guess I believe them. But cold turkey, that's just mean. Methadone is such a corroded medication when used long term. I used to weigh 180 pounds, but eventually shot up to 240 pounds. All my teeth cracked and fell out. I have developed post traumatic stress syndrome, and my blood pressure is dangerously high. That is why my face is always so red. I should check myself into a hospital before this withdrawal kills me. I'm pretty sure I am not long for this world, and that's okay. I am ready. Jesus promises that He has a place for me in heaven, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot nicer there compared to the ugliness and pain that is my life in this world. I tried going to the Gospel Rescue Mission, but I think that maybe I'm not spiritual enough for them. I have the impression that they are looking for people who wake up praising God, praying every moment of the day, and blessing all those that they meet. If that is what it takes to be religious, then I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, thanks to my dad. I pray every day, but sometimes I forget to pray before I fall asleep, but that's all right. My God is a forgiving God. I respect the Gospel Rescue Mission for what they do for the people like me. It would be really cool to finally find my way back into good health and good standing with the local community. Realistically, though, I am just dealing with so much at this time. I don't think I can handle the rules. I know I could fail, so why even try? Why set myself up for failure? It's easier to accept my failure, accept who I am, and just take things one day at a time. I usually sleep across the street at the entranceway to an office building. There's an alcove there that protects me from the weather. At nighttime, the alcove is empty with no lights and makes for a great place to lay down my cardboard mattress. During the day, when it rains, it could be difficult finding shelter. My alcove is full of people coming and going, taking care of their daily business. I have to find somewhere else to shelter myself from the elements. Sometimes on rainy days when you can't find a dry place to sit, you just have to wait it out, exposed. I always laugh thinking that it is God's way of saying, Bob, you need a shower. I go over to the soup kitchen for my one meal a day, which usually consists of two bologna sandwiches, a bag of chips, a piece of fruit, and a bowl of soup. That's plenty much, fills me up. I do wish they would serve coffee. I do miss having coffee now and then, but I guess it was too expensive for the soup kitchen to give it away for free. They have better use for their money than they receive. They could probably get 25 loaves of bread for the cost of a pound of coffee. Almost 3 or 4 times a year, someone will walk up to me and hand me their half-finished cup of coffee. I really enjoy those warm sips. There are good days and there are good people. The wintertime in Tucson can be a little uncomfortable with the plunging nighttime temperatures. There's a program in town called Winter Relief, but signing up for it is challenging. The window of opportunity to sign up for the program is extremely short, and if you miss getting signed up, then you're out of luck for the year. The sign up is just before November 30th, and if you are one of the lucky ones, every day the Salvation Army will come around, pick you up, and drop you off at one of the many churches in the downtown area. They will give you a warm bed to sleep in. They have shower facilities, and they even sit with you and talk about how the best assist your situation. They also provide you with a nourishing meal just to ensure you have all the nutrients you need throughout the day. Then in the morning they drop you off at the spot where they picked you up that night before. Then that evening it all starts over again. They continue this for 3 months until the cold winter nighttime chill finally gives way to warm temperatures. It is a wonderful program, but very difficult to get into. So here I am today, this broken, abused body. I was taking 110 milligrams of methadone a day, and suddenly my dose was dropped down to zero. My body and mind having a hard time handling the shock. That kind of jolt is probably going to kill me one of these days. I do realize that I could bum a pill here or there, but there is just delay process. So I refuse to take anything. I will try to fight this thing one day at a time, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, I will come out of the other and better person, a healthier person alive. The only other option for me is death, and the way I feel right now, I would gladly welcome the Grim Reaper. I'm tired of the daily struggles, but I won't give up. That's not my nature. Although my life sucks and there is a little hope for me, I will see every day people who have it much worse than me. That's where I get my strength to fight. I do have regrets when I reflect back through the cobwebs. I call my memory. I regret every smoking that first joint. I regret trying heroin. I also regret not reading my Bible more. If I were to do it again, if I had one wish, I guess I would wish to be able to start it all over again from the age of 18. I would have filled the void with the Bible instead of drugs. I would have listened more to people talking about Jesus instead of pretending. I already knew him. I have stayed in school. I would have stayed in school. I would have been a better person. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person deep down inside. I never drank alcohol. I did steal once and regretted it ever since. I love God's creation and am willing to put up with his daily suffering just to get the most of what God has given me. So if you see me on the street, sure I might ask you for a few bucks, but you know what I need your prayers. I know where I am going after I leave this world, and I know it won't be too long from now. Oh, yeah, one more thing. If you see me sitting here on the grass and I look hungry and upset, it isn't directed at you. I wouldn't hurt you or any of God's creatures. Just remember that I'm dealing with the physical pain that God has challenged me with. My body is simple reacting to the damage I've exposed it to over the years. My eyes are closed and I'm rocking back and forth. Don't think of me as crazy. I'm just praying and handing it all over to God. My suffering, like my time on this earth, will soon pass. Please offer me your prayers. Thank you for being interested in who I am and for listening to my story. May God bless you.